Bravo to the mainstream media. I'm not applauding the Republicans. I'm not applauding the Democrats. I am applauding the mainstream media and the establishment. My goodness, they had me absolutely convinced that there was going to be a red wave, red tsunami, whatever you want to call it. And am I upset that it didn't happen on the scale that they were saying it was going to happen? Well, no, absolutely not. There's still a lot of things going on inside of the election. It's already been a number of days since the election, and here we are. We're still waiting on the final results. As it stands right now, and I'll get into this a little bit more as the show progresses, but it looks as though the Republicans are probably going to win the House. The Senate is still up in the air. If I had to guess right now, I would say the Democrats are going to take the Senate, are going to hold on to Senate majority power. And the funny thing is, that's been the plan the whole time, was for the Republicans to take the House back, for the Democrats to hold on to the Senate. And what does that all have to do with? I remember the talk was, well, we need to hold on to the Senate because that way we have the ability, the power to nominate, to approve Supreme Court nominations for whenever Joe Biden starts appointing them. And the only way he can appoint them, of course, at this point is if either a Supreme Court justice were to pass away or were to retire, step down on some level. And that would give the Democrats then the ability to be able to vote on whether to approve or disapprove of the Supreme Court nomination. And of course, when it comes to Democrats, it's a rubber stamp if they have the majority. So that wouldn't be a problem at all. So I really do project at this point, I think that the Democrats are going to get it. I'll share my reasons as to why here shortly. Right now, it stands at 49-49. Nevada is in play right now. I believe it's Nevada is in play right now. And the Republicans, last I heard, were slightly ahead. And actually, the night that I'm doing this, which is Saturday night, they should be coming down with the final results as far as that, as well as with Kari Lake in Arizona. Who's the other candidate? Who knows who the other candidate is? But Kari Lake is running for governor in Arizona. Those results should come in tonight. Last I knew, she was a little bit behind as well. And it comes down to Maricopa County. Good old Maricopa County. So we'll see what happens there. And again, I'm not the least bit disappointed with the results. It was surprising. This is the Bill Sang Podcast. My name is Bill Sang. I'd like to thank you for joining us for tonight's episode. And yes, we are going to be politically focused tonight. We are going to be talking about the midterm elections. We're going to talk about the results. We're going to talk about all my conspiracy theories regarding what is going on with this all. Maybe that's an exaggeration. I'm not going to go a whole lot into conspiracy. A little bit of speculation here and there. But I find it very fascinating that this election, after the results, that now there's a lot of blame going around about as to why the Republicans didn't have 54 seats in the Senate and why they didn't have 230 seats inside of the House of Representatives. And the blame, where they're placing the blame, is very fascinating, and it all makes sense all of a sudden as to why they are doing that. And I'm glad to hear that several people that I listen to happen to agree. You know, that's one of the fascinating things about being somebody who listens to other programs, other shows with conservative hosts. And one of the things that I really appreciated was Rush Limbaugh. And again, you've heard me mention him a couple of times. And of course, in a political episode, I have to mention him a little bit because, one, I wonder what would Rush Limbaugh say right now. But not only that, what was very cool about him was he acknowledged that he actually was not changing as many minds per se as what he would have liked to, but rather the reason why he was so popular is because people would be driving, they'd be changing the radio station, and then all of a sudden they'd hear this voice, this great voice that he had, and they would see as they listened that they agreed with his opinions. They would find out who he is and make sure to tune into his show every day because finally they have somebody representing their values and their beliefs and expressing them on a show that is broadcast throughout the country and that is a political voice and a media voice that defies the narrative that we all just want to get along. And don't get me wrong, We do all just want to get along, but we don't want to go along with a mainstream narrative that goes against our values. So the fact that Rush really understood that was something special. And I think that there are people today that still understand that, people that I listen to. In fact, later on, I'm going to be referencing the great Bo Snerdley. If you do not know who Bo Snerdley is, one of Rush Limbaugh's really good friends. He was the call screener for Rush Limbaugh for many years, and I'm going to be citing him later to get the sort of what would Rush Limbaugh say about this. But what I'm bringing to you, and I expressed point number 1 to you, 10 points regarding the midterm elections, 10 takeaways from the midterm elections. And the first one is that the media and the establishment, regardless of which side of the aisle they land on, are a bunch of stinking liars, and they have their agenda that they want to accomplish. They're going to say whatever they can say to maintain power, to place blame, and basically to make you and I feel like a bunch of idiots. That's exactly what this was all about. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody pointed out earlier this week in one of the programs that I listened to that you had to be a little bit suspicious. The media never projects that the Republicans are going to take away 53 seats or 54 seats in the Senate or the 230-something seats inside of the House of Representatives. So we should have, and shame on us, we should have suspected from the get-go that that was not going to be the case. That's just that's not how the mainstream media rolls. And again, another one of the things that Rush Limbaugh always pointed out was if it sounded like good news, you have to ask yourself a question. Why are they saying this? Because it's never just to make you feel good, and rightfully so. It's always to accomplish some sort of an agenda. And the agenda in this case, and this is going to sound absurd, but is to discourage you, to dishearten you, to make you say, it wasn't a red wave. We only won the House of Representatives, but they took the Senate, or we only won the House of Representatives by a narrow margin, and we only took the Senate by a narrow margin. Oh my goodness, all is lost. Well, that's silly thinking right there, but that is what they're actually trying to do. They're trying to make it sound like all is lost when nothing is lost right now. Again, especially if we win the House of Representatives, that's a big win right there. That puts a big thumb in the eye of the Biden administration's agenda. I mean, it doesn't halt it altogether, but it definitely puts a big bump in the road, a huge obstacle that you need to overcome from this point forth. And by the way, for those of you who have been elected into office, I know you don't necessarily listen to this program, but if there happens to be somebody that is a representative, that is a senator, don't think that it is your job to pass a bunch of legislation. Don't think you're going there to write a bunch of new laws to make yourself look good, to make it look like you're doing something. If you stop the Biden agenda right now, you are doing your job, period. I want divide in Washington, D.C. That is how our government was structured. That's how the Constitution was structured. Not so that we have a bunch of government officials who get along and they have an agenda together that they're trying to fulfill. It was supposed to be divide. It was supposed to be something where there was long periods of no resolve until finally, decades later, somebody breaks and is like, okay, you know what? I'll vote for this piece of legislation. We'll approve it, whatever. It's supposed to be a very difficult process. Bottom line, I am going way off on a tangent right here, but I want to get into my list. And even though I said, so that was number one on my list, that one of the number one takeaway, that the mainstream media and the establishment politicians wanted to put blame somewhere, and they developed this red wave scenario to be able to place that. We'll talk more about that later. Spoiler alert, that means we're going to be talking a little bit about Donald Trump and a little bit about Ron DeSantis later. So, something I was very proud of in regards to the election. The state of Florida, absolutely killed it in terms of the Republican turnout. Ron DeSantis defeated that Crist, was it Charlie Crist? By almost 20 points. Where, however many years ago, DeSantis barely nipped his opponent by like a point or two, I think it was. And now on his re-election bid, 20-point victory. That is incredible. Not only that, Florida's deep red. And that has been one of the states, I know this past time was an exception, and again, that's very suspicious, but Florida is one of those states that oftentimes determines elections, and probably even more so since it carries about as many electoral votes as the state of New York right now. It is just swelling in population because of their good policies. Also, very proud of the state of Ohio where I live. Guys, we rocked it here in the heartland. We rocked it in the Buckeyes state. We are red. And one of the commentators I heard talking back in 2020, he said that he would have been more surprised if Ohio turned blue than if Texas turned blue. That means that Ohio is rock solid conservative right now. And it's not by a huge margin, but it's big enough to make a difference. And by the way, Ohio is another one of those swing states that everybody relies on in order to turn an election in their favor. So Ohio and Florida are both swinging conservative this time around. And it's pretty solid. And so I'm proud to be living in the state of Ohio right now because we are overall, I'm not saying entirely, but overall embracing conservative values and conservative candidates. Now, regarding that J.D. Vance, I believe his name is, yeah, I'm not super duper excited about him. He was a never Trumper for quite some time. Donald Trump placed his support behind Vance, and he won. And then the media is making this big deal out of that Vance did not mention Trump inside of his victory speech. Big deal. It's his victory speech. It wasn't Donald Trump's victory speech. It was Vance's victory speech. And he has every right to say or not say whatever he wants in his own victory speech, and he deserves that right to do so. So congratulations, Mr. Vance, to making it into the Senate, securing your seat. I'm very happy. And I know I had to hold my nose for Mike DeWine and vote for him. I really didn't want to, but I did, and he won re-election, and I'm glad that he did. And I know that some people say that, Mike DeWine won re-election. Yeah, but would you prefer a Democrat? And absolutely not. We see what happens to Democrat states, and I do not understand why the blue states keep on electing Democrats, because they just keep on driving them deeper and deeper into the hole, when conversely, when you have the more conservative of a state you have, the more prosperous of a state you have. So you just don't quite grasp why it is they want to drive their states into oblivion. Next point. Republicans look like they're taking the House. That's a big takeaway. Right now, the count as far as representatives right now, it's 201 to 211 in this election cycle. The Republicans, they need 7 more seats to gain the majority, and the Democrats need 17 more, not states, I'm sorry. They need 17 more wins, representatives, whatever, in order to secure the majority. And last time I checked, I believe that there are, I think, 9 states that are leaning Republican. I keep on saying states. I don't know if it would be, districts? Is that what it would be? There were 9 races, at least, that were leaning Republican, and they only need 7. So they could afford to even lose 2 of those, and they'll still get the majority. On the contrary, the Democrats, I can't remember. I counted theirs, but I can't remember how many were leaning Democrat. They pretty much got to win every single one of theirs and then turn some of these ones that are leaning Republican. Now, where I am hesitant is the fact that it's taking so long to tabulate these. I mean, this is very kind of scary because it reminds me a lot of 2020 right there, even though that the projections are kind of on our side as it relates to the House of Representatives. But the longer the elections go on, the more nervous I tend to get. And in fact, I am really starting to be against early voting. That's one of the reasons why it's taking so long. Early voting, mail-in voting. The more mail-in votes that there are, the longer it's going to take to count them, because those are the last ones that they count. And that's kind of scary to me. I understand we need absentee ballots. That's great. Do absentee ballots, get the verification and all that. But also understand, the more early voting, the more absentee ballots that are sent in, the higher the likelihood of voter fraud. So you know what? It's discouraging to think that nobody gets it. The reason why the polls are open for one day, for a limited amount of time, is so that you've got to make a sacrifice in order to go out and vote. It's not supposed to be easy. You know what? Here's a secret I'm going to tell you. Don't go telling your friends this. I don't think that everybody should vote. I really don't think that everybody should vote, because let's face it, most of your friends do not even know what they're voting for. They do not even know who they are voting for. And I've had a number of conversations where I've asked people, why did you vote for this person? They don't have an answer. I can tell them why I voted for the people I voted for, but they don't have an answer. Lots of times it's just because they've always voted this way, or they just they don't like Donald Trump, or something obscure. And I find there to be a lot of reason to be skeptical right now. This is my next point, by the way, regarding shady voting practices. Exhibit A, Arizona, Maricopa County. There was something funky going on with the voting machines in Maricopa County. If you recall, back in 2020, Maricopa County was one of the counties that was brought into question big time when it came to the outcome of the election. And Donald Trump tried to get to the bottom of it, and they would not let him get to the bottom of it. Lots of anomalies in Maricopa County, and this year you have problems with the voting machines in Maricopa County. Hundreds of thousands of ballots. I don't know if they're able to recover the votes or not. Hundreds of thousands of ballots potentially lost. And so this is a very tight race, and so we cannot afford to have hundreds of thousands of ballots lost. I think it was Blake Masters was the Democrat candidate for Senate in Arizona. He ended up winning. Could that have been different had these votes been counted properly? I don't know. Kari Lake was a very popular candidate, and right now, tonight, as I said, as I'm talking, it is possible that we will find out whether she wins or loses her bid for governor. Again, at the end of the day, does it bother me that much if she doesn't get it? No, but on the same token, how is it that 2 years ago, problems in Maricopa County as far as voting, and 2 years later, today, again, problems in Maricopa County when it comes to the election? Arizona's got to get this figured out. Somebody's got to do it. I don't care which way this election swings. There needs to be an investigation into this. This is unacceptable that there'd be this sort of a problem in this county during this election cycle. And is this going to be something that happens every single year, that it looks like that things are not? I know it's going to sound very partisan, but every time that it looks like things are not going the way for Democrats. And I know that might sound controversial. You might be, well, you're complaining that it looks like things are going exactly the way it should for Democrats. Only because of these anomalies, I think. I mean, maybe it's probably going to be a tight race anyway, but that's exactly it. Every vote counts. Every legal vote needs to count. And the fact that there were these sort of anomalies, that there is this sort of problem in Maricopa County, is very, very disturbing. Next point. Exhibit B, Dr. Oz and George Fetterman, I think his name is. It's not that I necessarily believe that there was voter fraud of any sort in this one. You have to wonder. I mean, I don't like going down this route, but have you seen George Fetterman? I mean, have you listened to him speak? And in fairness, the guy had a stroke about 6 months ago, and you can tell he really struggles processing what he's going to say. And now he is a senator for Pennsylvania. And I to tell the truth, I don't know anything about George Fetterman. I am just blown away that he actually beat Dr. Oz. And not that I am a huge fan of Dr. Oz. I heard that he was running on a number of liberal policies, including I hope I'm allowed to say this, the gender transition inside of children. And so he ran as a Republican, but he really didn't do a good job at setting himself apart as a Republican. And this is one of those things I know that Donald Trump had supported Dr. Oz and had endorsed Dr. Oz. And so I really was kind of surprised that Dr. Oz ended up losing this one, especially as bad as what he did. Again, Pennsylvania is just a sketchy place, sketchy state when it comes to elections anyway, particularly, again, going back to 2020, but not just 2020. I think of 2012. I think of 2008 when you had like the Black Panthers intimidating people outside of the election stations and scaring people who wanted to go and vote. Particularly those who wanted to go in and vote Republican. I mean, there are people saying that we need to kill white babies outside of these places. And my goodness. So Pennsylvania, man, I hope you're able to have an honest election again. And I'm not fully bringing this one into question. I didn't think that Oz was that unlikable, but on the same token, the problem is Republicans know what they're voting for. And when you put somebody like Dr. Oz, who's espousing and clinging to more liberal values, we could have done better, really. Or Dr. Oz, you could have changed your message. You could have aligned yourself more closely with conservative policies, as I know that Donald Trump didn't sound like the most conservative candidate back in 2016, but he really pulled through when the rubber hit the road after he got elected. And I don't think that people had the confidence that Oz was going to be able to do the same thing. Where and Trump, by the way, if you listen to what he was saying, he really wasn't veering that far off of a conservative standpoint. Yeah, he was a populist, but he wasn't veering too far away from conservatism, and so people were willing to cast their vote for him, opposed to Hillary Clinton. Exhibit C. Why aren't some of the states finished with counting their ballots and getting their election results? It's Saturday night right now that I am recording this, and the election happened on Tuesday. 98% of Florida, and Florida had counted 98% of their ballots on election night. Florida, they're a huge state. Like I said, they have the same number of electoral votes as New York. So the fact they're able to do it, come on, guys, you got to be able to get these votes counted up. And I know that there, other places might have tighter races, and so it's coming down to the wire. But still, we should be done by now. And this goes back to the whole idea of that we need to stop this whole early voting mail-in ballot. I mean, not the absentee ballots, but just general mail-in ballots and stuff. We need to put an end to that. All votes need to be verified, and all votes should be done on election day unless there's a very good reason as to why the person cannot make it to the polls on election day. This leads into an exception. Georgia has a runoff. They have the only runoff this time around, and it's between Herschel Walker and some guy. I don't know. This is another thing. Name recognition normally goes a pretty long ways, and the fact that Herschel Walker has not won yet. Now, this is Georgia, and I'm not too surprised. This is the thing. Herschel Walker, he's a celebrity. I think that Herschel Walker's great, though. My goodness, I don't know how he didn't just dominate that race. I think he should have destroyed the guy, but on the same token, I know that Walker was not something a lot of people were excited about. They were kind of beating him up over his inability to articulate his political beliefs all that well. And I get that. That does hurt a candidate significantly. I know that it hurt Dr. Ben Carson back in 2016 in the primaries. But Herschel Walker, I have to give him props. Again, he had probably the debate line of this election cycle, and that was the guy that he's running against was a pastor, and they're debating about abortion. And the guy, this so-called pastor, was saying to Herschel Walker that you stand against the rights of women, blah 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 blah. You should be for abortion, not against abortion, blah 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 blah. And Herschel Walker, oh, I loved his line. I'm probably going to mess it up, but he said something along the lines of, "You're a pastor. don't you think you should be aborting less babies and baptizing more babies? That's a mic drop moment right there. So Herschel Walker's got my respect, regardless of what happens in this runoff on December 6th. So that one's going to take a little bit of time, and that's just the lay of the land right there. There's nothing you can do about it. He's got to do the runoff. I think he was losing, so this actually gives him an opportunity to pull it off and win in Georgia. So be praying for that. I really hope that Herschel Walker wins. I don't know how great he is from a political standpoint, but I think that he's a rock solid guy. I think he's got strong character. So one of the things that I've been wondering, that I started wondering immediately after the election results, the majority of the election results, seeing that it wasn't this huge, massive red wave as we're being told by the media, is what would Rush say? What would Rush say? And I got thinking, and I remembered, oh yeah, Bo Snerdley has a podcast. He has a radio show in New York, and I can find it on his podcast. And so I pulled up Bo Snerdley, and one of the first titles of his podcast episodes was "A Win is a Win." Bingo. I think you nailed it there, Bo. And by the way, Bo Snerdley was the call screener for Rush Limbaugh, so that is significant. One of Rush Limbaugh's best friends, and I already knew he was black, by the way, but after he passed away, he made a lot of TV appearances, and my goodness, that guy is so cool. I love him. I heard him on the radio only once during Rush's days, and it's because Trump had called Rush Limbaugh, and Rush had to take the phone at the beginning of the show, and so Bo slipped in to kind of tell everybody what was going on. It was the only time he'd ever done it. Very, very cool guy. But also, he picked up on a lot of things for this, for the election results here too. Particularly the whole dump Trump thing. He posted an article, got a lot of flack about it, about do we need to get rid of Donald Trump as the leader of the Republican Party, so to speak, in a spirit sort of sense. And he wasn't posting that because he thought that they should. He was just posting because he wanted people to think about it, at least, to read the article, and he wanted to read the article as well. He just simply posted it. He's actually a huge supporter of Donald Trump. Really, he picked up on it that, and this is where I'll start getting into this, that the big red wave thing that they manufactured, that they said that should happen, and yes, the circumstance was right, there should have been a huge red wave based on economics, based on what's going on around our country, and who is responsible for what's happening inside of our country. Yes, the conditions were right for a red wave, but the problem is that I believe that they already knew it wasn't going to be a red wave. First of all, there's always going to be voter fraud, and I don't know if there's anything we can do about that in a large sense until we'll get some Republican governors inside of these blue states, and I don't even know if that's possible anymore. I mean, it's darn near impossible to pull that off, because who do you think's responsible for voter fraud? Well, it's the people who are in control of those things. In large part, that boils down to governorship, the very headship of these states. So is that going to happen? I don't know. But regardless, they wanted to pit the blame on Donald Trump. They want to say, oh, you see, he endorsed Dr. Oz. He endorsed Herschel Walker. He endorsed Kari Lake. He endorsed this person. He endorsed that person. And look at that. They all lost. So it's Donald Trump's fault. You know what? I think that we need to get rid of Donald Trump. Well, I think that Steven Crowder and his team did a great job of breaking down what really happened there. It's not that Trump had lost his popularity. They came up with a couple different theories that kind of fit together, and I thought it made an awful lot of sense. I think I already shared one of those with you. But the one I'm thinking of right now, and so one of their theories was regarding, let me think. I think I just lost my train of thought right now. Oh, yes, it's that oftentimes what Donald Trump will do is he'll endorse the person that he thinks is most likely to win. Case in point, J.D. Vance, never Trumper, but it looked like he was the most likely one to win, so what did he do? He endorsed him. Now he's also prone to celebrity, so Dr. Oz, there you go, he's a celebrity, name recognition, and I don't blame him, name recognition. It makes sense to endorse the person with name recognition. But Oz did not have conservative values. He did not appeal to Republican voters. Herschel Walker, I don't think that was a bad pick. But again, from a political standpoint, you see, Trump really knows how to speak the language of the people. Herschel Walker, as cool of a guy as he is, I don't think that he has that yet. He doesn't. He's not. a talker, so to speak. He was a running back for a football team. I think he played for the Colts. I think so. He was a running back. He got stuff done, and I think he's got rock solid values. Problem is, he just wasn't ready for this election, this whole politics thing. He's used to reality and grinding things out, but politics is a world that's full of, to put it nicely, nonsense, and I don't think that Walker was into that sort of stupidity. He doesn't speak that sort of language. For Donald Trump as a business owner, he had to speak that stupidity every day. Not saying he's stupid, but saying that he had to deal with a lot of nonsense, and thus he had to learn how to speak in that language quite a bit, and it resonates with people. He knew how to speak to people the right way in order to win their votes. Lots of people that he endorsed did not have that ability or the values that he had in order to win an election. Was it Donald Trump's fault? No, they probably came closer than what any other candidate probably could have. And we'll never know that, but I think that it's probably true. But regardless, this election boils down to, were they a strong candidate or weren't they? Did they get their message out or didn't they? And something I can't remember who pointed this out, Mitch McConnell was no help whatsoever. The Republican Party should have been putting their values at the forefront of every election and reminding the people what it is that's happening, what it is they need to vote for, and what it is we are voting against, who the opposition is, and what their vision is for the country. And I remember wondering, I remember thinking, okay, so the Republican strategy right now must be just let the Democrat Party implode on itself, because I'm not hearing anything out of them. And so I really thought, okay, they know they got it in the bag, so they're just going to stay quiet, lay low, and things are going to turn out good for them. Nope. That's one of the reasons why it didn't turn out as big as what it should have, because they were not articulating their values. And this is something that, again, that Rush had pointed out a long time ago. Moving on. Trump versus DeSantis. I'm going to keep this short. Right now, there's a little bit of battling between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is just growing insanely in popularity, and I'm excited about this. I think that DeSantis is incredible. He is probably right now the best politician in America today, not just in terms of politicking, but in terms of governing. I mean, my goodness, this man is unbelievable. And by the way, he is a Rush baby, which is one of the reasons why I love him so much, because his values that he's enforcing in Florida, his policies that he's enforcing in Florida are in line with the conservative agenda. They are Rush Limbaugh approved. In fact, he even asked Rush if he could have the first ever degree from the EIB Institute of Advanced Conservative Studies. And that's made up, by the way, something that Rush always said. And I don't know that he got that done or not. Bottom line, Trump and DeSantis, they need to be civil. Donald Trump, don't beat up DeSantis too much. Remember, he's on your side. We don't want you dragging his name through the mud. And I don't think that DeSantis will bite. I don't think that he'll get dirty. I think that he will point out certain failings of Donald Trump in the future, and that might not look good, but he's got to do it. I mean, they're fighting a fight here. They're running a race, because let's face it, this is what 2024 looks like in the Republican Party. Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. And right now, the establishment seems to be backing DeSantis. I don't know if they know what they're getting into with that. But again, I think that Trump's going to win out, because he's got the greater name recognition, and he did a fantastic job in office. Either one wins the nomination, I'm voting for him, hands down. And what I really hope shakes out, to tell the truth, as much as I like Ron DeSantis, and as much as I want to vote for him for president, I kind of hope that Trump wins in 2024, wins the election in 2024, and then we get 4 more years of Trump, and then 8 years of DeSantis following that. But we'll see what happens. Things always change. So far in the future, we don't know how things are going to play out. Last point. Never trust the media or political factions. Pray, do what's right, vote, leave it in God's hands, and then take action and bring about change. Because all these things that these people get you distracted by. I remember hearing somebody this past week say they're so confused about all the political ads. They say this person did that, and then the other person says no, they didn't, and then they accuse the other person of doing something and placing an attack ad, and this person said I don't even know what to think anymore. And one of the elders at the church I go to, I'm so glad that he said this. He told the person, well, just stop listening to it. There you go. Don't worry about all that stuff. Vote on your values and leave it in the hands of God, because ultimately we're not in control. I think that even though 2020 didn't end the way that we wanted it to, guess what? It ended the way God wanted it to. Whether we like the person in office right now or not, it ended the way that God wanted it to. And it's for his purposes. That's not saying that he's approving the person in the office. That's simply saying that it all works out according to God's plan. Nobody can break God's plan. So don't get so stressed out of it. I made peace with this election cycle pretty early on. I guess that we just got to trust God for whatever it is that he's doing during this time, because he is real, he is in control, and he does intend good for those he have called and who love him, who are called according to his purposes. With that, this is the Bill Saying Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Go on to Rumble, go on to YouTube, go on to Buzzsprout. Go on to, go on to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you can find podcasts. And make sure you are subscribing. Make sure you're going on to WilliamHSing.com, buying yourself a Bill Saying Podcast t-shirt. God, family, and country. The one that I'm wearing right now. So get out there, be active, do good, and just trust that God's going to make everything right in the end. So this is the Bill Saying Podcast. Have a good rest of your day.